All right, I thought I'd do a quick follow-up following the discussion with that Little Bill and Mr. Mark Evans had in the comments, which is quite good. So Mark pointed out, so my whole issue is that you've got, oh, it's plugged in, unplug it. So you've got this stabilizer board that's got 12 volts marked on it here. But really it was outputting, it's unregulated, so 15 volts. But no, it's outputting actually 27 volts. And I couldn't see any, there was no obvious 7812 or, discrete regulator. But Mark actually pointed out, was it Mark? Yeah, Mark actually pointed out that there is actually a regulator on the board using this transistor and this zener diode. So we see here we come in from the DIN and we get our 12 volts out. So that's the regulator there. And the only place that we can see that the regulator is, well, the 12 volts is used is on this buffer here for the composite video output. You got your 75 ohms there to impedance match, I guess. That's the only place the 12 volts is used inside the machine. Now this isn't working because if you follow it all back, there is actually, did I check? I think it's what, yeah, Y. So it's the luma component, is it? Basically, there is no luma component coming out of the ULA, so there is no composite. So I've converted it to RGB anyway. So we don't really need the 12 volts. So if we don't need the 12 volts, then we don't need the 27 volts going into the machine, which I would be quite happy with. So I think the best thing to do is just actually, I could just snip it off and just leave the 12 volts disconnected. So let's actually open up the machine. I was going to open up anyway to have a look at lubricating the keys, so that'll be another video. I don't want to be too careful. I don't want to break any more of my RGB here. So that is probably, yeah, that's it. That makes sense now, what Mark was saying. Let's have a look. I hope you don't mind me going mobile, but yeah, so here we've got that transistor. And I would say this is the zener diode here, and then we've got this large limiting resistor. So this is taking the 12 volts, or the 27 volts, and dropping it down to 12 volts, which is then used to bias the onto here, the collector of this transistor here, which is used as a buffer for the, I think that's 75 ohms there. Let's use then for a buffer for the analog output that was going up to here, but now I've since removed. I think if you have a look, follow the trace down, it comes down to this 75 ohms here, and then up to here. So yeah, so there you go. So that's where the 12 volts. That's where the 12 volts is generated there. Thanks, Mark, for pointing that out, for bothering to look at the schematic, because I did it. Yeah, and then the 27 volts there coming in there. So I think over here, there's no point having this large voltage coming into the machine in the first place, because it's not being used. So I'm just going to disconnect that, the 12 volt line, and it's going to be a 5 volt only machine, which is pretty much what all the other Spectrum clones are. Yeah, so that was just a quick follow-up. Now that I've got this apart, I'm going to have a look at see if we can improve this key action a little bit. Okay, thank you very much. There we go. So for the purist who demands 27 volts in their machine regardless, it's still there, so you can still do it later. But yeah, 5 volts only now. Yeah, while I'm here, I should probably replace that linear regulator, shouldn't I? Yeah, with a switching one, shouldn't I? Oh yeah. No, I'm going to leave this one because it's check well, Czechoslovak Tesla. So I'll keep that as a genuine part. I'm not too happy about these cables, but as long as I don't stop fucking around with it, it should be fine. So there we go. So it's now a 5 volt only, regulated 5 volts into the machine. Now let's see if we can do something about those keypads, key switch actions.